Northwood's bullies messed with the wrong girl. Her revenge was explosive. Maya Roth was a ghost by design. At 16, she had mastered the art of inconsequence, a necessary survival skill for the perpetually new kid. Her family's transient lifestyle, dictated by her father's highly specialized and often secretive consulting work, meant she had attended 6 different schools in 8 years. Northwood High was just the latest station in a long, lonely journey. She was neither ugly nor beautiful, a mousy, brown-haired girl of average height with a frame that suggested she might be swept away by a strong gust of wind. Her clothes were deliberately bland, grey hoodies, worn jeans, nondescript sneakers. She spoke only when spoken to, kept her eyes fixed on her textbooks or the scuffed linoleum floors, and moved through the crowded hallways with the quiet efficiency of a whisper. This curated invisibility was her armor. At Northwood, however, her armor had begun to fail. The problem wasn't a single flaw in her system, but a trio of them, walking, talking engines of casual cruelty: Jessica Vance, Brittany Miller, and Kyle Peterson. Jessica, the undisputed queen of Northwood's sophomore class, was a vision of curated perfection. Her blonde hair was always impeccably styled, her makeup flawless, and her clothing looked like it was lifted from a teen fashion magazine. But beneath the glossy exterior was a chasm of insecurity that she filled by tearing others down. Brittany was her second in command, a sycophantic echo who amplified Jessica's every sneer and insult. And then there was Kyle, a lanky, smirking jock who orbited Jessica, using his physical presence to intimidate anyone she targeted. Their chosen victim was Maya. Her quietness wasn't seen as a defense, but as an invitation. Her solitude wasn't a choice, but a weakness to be exploited. The bullying started small, as it always does. A snicker as she passed, a deliberately loud whisper of "look at the freak," a shoulder check in the hallway that sent her books scattering. Maya, true to her training, did nothing. She'd gather her things, her face a neutral mask, and walk away. She could feel the eyes on her, the mix of pity and relief from the other students, relief that it wasn't them. The teachers, overworked and underpaid, saw only the surface-level teenage drama, another quiet kid having a hard time fitting in. They'd offer a platitude if they saw anything at all, but never intervened. Maya's inaction wasn't born of fear, but of discipline. Her father, a man who spoke in calm, measured tones even when discussing the structural demolition of a 50-story skyscraper, had drilled one principle into her above all others: control. "Emotion is a wildfire, Maya," he would say, sketching diagrams on a whiteboard in their garage workshop. "It's chaotic, unpredictable, and destructive, but control is a shaped charge. It's precise, it's deliberate. You apply the right amount of force in the exact right place at the exact right time, and you can bring down an empire without a single wasted ounce of energy." He wasn't just talking about buildings, he was giving her a philosophy for life. So she absorbed the taunts, the shoves, the isolation. She catalogued each insult, each act of aggression, not as a wound, but as a data point. She was gathering intelligence, studying their patterns, their weaknesses. They thought they were breaking her. They were only teaching her the layout of their own foundations. The cafeteria was their primary theater. A few weeks into her tenure at Northwood, Maya was carrying her tray to an empty corner table when Kyle's foot snaked out into the aisle. It was a classic, unimaginative trip. She went down hard, her tray clattering, a spray of milk and tater tots decorating the floor. A wave of laughter, led by Jessica's piercing shriek, washed over the cavernous room. "Watch where you're going, mute Maya," Jessica called out, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. Maya's cheeks burned, a hot flash of shame and anger. The wildfire her father warned her about licked at the edges of her control. She wanted to leap up, to use the rudimentary self-defense he'd also taught her, to wipe the smirk off Kyle's face. But she saw her father's calm expression in her mind's eye. Control is a shaped charge. She took a slow, deep breath, pushed herself up and walked away without a word, leaving her spilled lunch and her dignity on the floor. The humiliation was a corrosive acid, but she held it in, contained it. This wasn't the time. The pressure wasn't high enough yet. The escalation continued. They stole her homework and ripped it up in front of her. They'd corner her by her locker, a triangle of intimidation, whispering vile things just loud enough for her to hear. Jessica took a particular liking to psychological warfare, starting rumors that Maya was a creep who spied on people, that she had a weird smell, that her family was in a cult. Each lie was a small, sharp pebble tossed at her. Maya endured it all, her face an unreadable slate. Inside, however, the pressure was building, the data points were accumulating. She knew Jessica's vanity was her load-bearing wall. She knew Kyle's aggression was a performance for Jessica. She knew Brittany had no identity of her own. She understood their structure, and she was beginning to formulate a plan for demolition. The breaking point, the moment the fuse was irrevocably lit, came on a grey, drizzly Tuesday afternoon. School had just let out, and Maya was taking a shortcut behind the gymnasium, a desolate area of cracked asphalt and overgrown weeds. She was heading to the public library, her sanctuary. Suddenly, they were there, blocking her path. Jessica, Kyle, and Brittany, looking bored and predatory. "Going somewhere, freak," Jessica sneered, crossing her arms. Maya tried to sidestep them, but Kyle moved to block her. "Jess asked you a question," he said, his voice low. There was something different in the air today, a sharper edge to their malice. Jessica's eyes scanned the ground, and a cruel smile spread across her face. She bent down and picked up a jagged piece of loose asphalt. "You know, you're like a rock, Maya," she said, tossing it from hand to hand. "Dull, grey, and nobody cares if you get kicked around." She looked at Kyle. "Let's see if she makes a sound." Kyle grinned and picked up a rock of his own. Brittany, ever the follower, did the same. The first rock, thrown by Kyle, wasn't meant to seriously injure. It was a test. It struck Maya squarely in the shoulder blade, a sharp, shocking impact that stole her breath. It hurt. It hurt more than the shoves, more than the insults. This was a physical violation that crossed a fundamental line. Another rock, this one from Brittany, grazed her arm. Then Jessica threw hers. It was smaller, but she threw it with a vicious snap of her wrist. It hit the back of Maya's head, just above her neck. Her vision swam for a second, a spark of bright pain flaring behind her eyes. Laughter. They were laughing. Through the haze of pain, a profound and terrifying clarity washed over Maya. The data collection was complete. The structural analysis was finished. The pressure had reached its critical threshold. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, but this time it wasn't a caution, it was a command. Apply the right amount of force, in the exact right place, at the exact right time. She didn't cry out. She didn't even flinch. She slowly turned her head, her eyes, for the first time, meeting Jessica's directly. The utter lack of fear, the cold, analytical calm in her gaze, made Jessica's smile falter for a fraction of a second. Maya turned and walked away, the pain in her head and shoulder a distant hum beneath the roar of a new, chilling purpose. The demolition had been scheduled. That night, Maya didn't do her homework. She went to the garage. It was her father's temple, a place of order, precision, and potential energy. Tools hung on a pegboard in perfect silhouette. Bins of wires, resistors, and capacitors were neatly labeled. On a large workbench in the center sat a few of her father's decommissioned demonstration models, intricate cross-sections of buildings with color-coded support beams. For the past year, under his tutelage, she'd been learning the trade. Not just the brute force of explosives, but the science behind it, chemistry, physics, engineering. It was a complex, beautiful art form to her. Demolition wasn't about destruction, it was about transformation. You took something that existed and through a controlled catalytic event turned it into something else entirely. Tonight, she was the artist. Her target wasn't a person. Her father had been adamant about the sanctity of life. The goal was never to harm, only to neutralize a structure. In this case, the structure was Jessica's social standing, her arrogance, her power. And the centerpiece of that power was her car. A brand new cherry-red convertible her parents had given her for her birthday. It was her throne, the symbol of her status, which she always parked in the most visible spot in the student lot. Maya began to assemble her materials. She wasn't building a bomb, not in the traditional violent sense. She was building what her father called a dispersal device, a non-lethal, non-incendiary, but spectacularly effective agent of chaos. The core was a small, high-pressure CO2 canister, scavenged from an old soda maker. The payload was a chemical concoction of her own design, a synthesis of compounds that, when combined and aerosolized, would create the most foul, pervasive, and impossible-to-remove stench imaginable. It was a precise mixture of thiols, the family of chemicals responsible for the smells of skunks, rotten eggs, and garlic, and a powerful, industrial-grade adhesive dye she'd ordered online under the guise of a textile art project. The color was a hideous, vibrant Pepto-Bismol pink. The device was designed to be magnetically attached to the undercarriage of a car, triggered by a simple, cheap remote detonator from a toy car. It was elegant, precise, and utterly devastating. As she soldered the final wire, a strange calm settled over her. This wasn't revenge. This was a controlled demolition. The next few days at school were tense. The bullies, emboldened by her non-reaction to the rock-throwing, grew cockier. They seemed to sense a change in her, but misinterpreted it. Her newfound quietness wasn't submission. It was the silent focus before a detonation. Her posture was straighter, her gaze more direct. She didn't look away anymore. She just looked through them. One person noticed the shift. Leo, a quiet boy from her chemistry class who sat in the back and sketched in a notebook, saw it. He saw the flicker of something new in her eyes. Not fear, but focus. He saw her watch Jessica and her crew with an unnerving, almost scientific detachment. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew the dynamic had fundamentally and irrevocably shifted. The confrontation came on Friday. It was the day of the big pre-game pep rally for the football team. The entire school would be outside on the athletic fields. It was the perfect stage. During lunch, Maya overheard Jessica bragging to Brittany. "We should do something big for Mute Maya at the rally, something everyone will see." They were planning to accidentally trip her into the giant mud puddle near the bleachers. Their lack of imagination was almost disappointing. It was the perfect opening. As the last bell rang, the student body poured out onto the fields. The air was electric with school spirit. The band played, cheerleaders practiced routines, and students milled about, high on the promise of the weekend. Maya, carrying her backpack, walked calmly toward the student parking lot. It was emptier now, most people already at the rally. She spotted Jessica's convertible gleaming under the afternoon sun like a gaudy idol. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a steady, powerful beat. This was the moment. The final check before pushing the button. She scanned the area. A few stragglers were heading to the field, but no one was paying attention to the quiet girl in the grey hoodie. With practiced efficiency, she knelt by the driver's side of the car, pretending to tie her shoe. Her hand darted under the vehicle, the powerful magnet of the device clicking satisfyingly onto the frame. She stood up and walked away, melting into the crowd, heading toward the bleachers. The device was set. The trap was laid. She found a spot on the far end of the bleachers, a safe distance away, and waited. Jessica, Kyle, and Brittany made their grand entrance, swaggering toward the center of the crowd. They spotted Maya, and a collective smirk spread across their faces. The show was about to begin. As they drew closer, positioning themselves for their planned accident, Maya's hand slipped into her pocket, her thumb resting on the small, unassuming button of the detonator. Jessica took a step toward her, opening her mouth to deliver some cutting remark. She never got the chance. Maya pressed the button. There was no fiery explosion. There was no shrapnel. There was only a loud, sudden thump hiss that echoed from the parking lot. Every head turned. From underneath Jessica's prize convertible, a massive, dense cloud of opaque pink smoke erupted, billowing outwards with incredible speed. It wasn't smoke. It was a pressurized, aerosolized goo. It enveloped the car in seconds, clinging to the cherry-red paint, the leather seats, the pristine windshield. And then the smell hit. It was a physical assault on the senses, a tidal wave of putrescence that rolled over the crowd. It was the smell of 1,000 rotten eggs, a field of garlic, and a legion of skunks, all blended together and amplified to an unbearable degree. It was indescribably vile. Students gagged, their hands flying to cover their mouths and noses. People started coughing, their eyes watering. The stench was so potent, so chemically aggressive, it felt like it was coating their tongues. Panic erupted. The pep rally dissolved into a chaotic scramble as students fled the toxic cloud. In the center of it all stood Jessica, Kyle, and Brittany, frozen in horror. The pink goo had not only consumed the car, but had also splattered onto them as it expanded, coating Jessica's designer jeans and Kyle's Letterman jacket in the foul, sticky, neon pink substance. Jessica's face was a mask of pure disbelief, her mouth hanging open as she stared at her defiled chariot, her ruined social symbol. The car wasn't just dirty, it was destroyed. The adhesive dye would never come off the paint. The interior was a biohazard. The smell would linger for weeks, a permanent monument to her humiliation. Amid the chaos, Maya stood up. She walked calmly down from the bleachers, the crowd parting before her as if she were Moses and they the Red Sea. They stared at her with a new kind of awe, a mixture of fear and profound respect. She walked right up to the stunned, stinking trio. They flinched as she approached. She stopped a few feet away, the horrible smell not seeming to faze her. She looked directly at Jessica, her voice quiet, but carrying with absolute authority over the lingering coughs and groans. "You wanted to throw things," Maya said, her voice devoid of any emotion except a chilling finality. "I just have a better throwing arm and a deeper understanding of chemistry." She held Jessica's gaze for a moment longer, letting the full weight of what had just happened sink in. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the dispersing crowd, leaving behind a ruined car, 3 social pariahs, and a legend. The aftermath was immediate and transformative. By Monday, the story had morphed into myth. Maya Roth, the quiet ghost, was now whispered about with reverence. They called her the demolitionist, or simply the bomb. No one dared to even look at her the wrong way. The fear she inspired wasn't from a threat of violence, but from the unknown. She had demonstrated a level of intelligence, planning, and cold-blooded execution that was far beyond the realm of high school squabbles. She had played a different game, on a level they couldn't even comprehend. Respect followed fear. She was no longer invisible, she was formidable. She could now sit wherever she wanted in the cafeteria, and no one would say a word. The space around her was her own. Jessica, Kyle, and Brittany were socially annihilated. Jessica's car was declared a total loss by the insurance company. The stench clung to them for days, a physical manifestation of their public disgrace. They became the new outcasts, shunned and mocked in whispers. A week later, a humbled, tear-streaked Jessica approached Maya by her locker. I'm sorry," she stammered, not meeting Maya's eyes. "For everything." Maya looked at her, not with triumph, but with the dispassionate gaze of a scientist observing a concluded experiment. "I know," was all she said, before turning and walking away. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about acknowledging a result. The structure had been neutralized. Maya had found her peace, but not through violence or by becoming the monster she fought. She had used her unique, formidable knowledge to deconstruct a system of cruelty with surgical precision. She hadn't thrown a punch. She had initiated a chemical reaction. She had learned the most important lesson her father had taught her. True power wasn't about making the loudest noise or causing the most damage. It was about control. It was about knowing exactly where to apply pressure to make the whole rotten structure collapse on its own. She was still quiet, still observant, but she was no longer a ghost. She was a presence, a testament to the fact that the most unassuming people can harbor the most extraordinary power, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed.